Mark Twain once remarked that there were three kinds of lies. There are lies, there are damned lies, and then there are statistics. Now, that wasn't the quote he came up with. He picked that up by somebody in the UK. It's not actually clear from whom he picked it up. But that's sort of the basis of what I want to talk about today, because I want to talk about the statistics related to COVID-19, or as some people are calling it now, COVID-1984. I'm not making the argument. Let me make this perfectly clear at the beginning. I am not making the argument that the statistics that we're getting from our politicians and the scientists are inaccurate, that the numbers are wrong. That's not my point. But I am going to argue that the numbers they give us, that's not to say that the numbers they're working with, but the numbers they release and that are readily available in the news media or on various websites are, while not inaccurate, make what's happening look a lot worse than it is. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm just saying they make it look worse than it is. It's bad already. And they don't provide context for what's actually happening, which makes it very difficult for the average American, if he or she is trying to go about their lives and make decisions about risk, to make intelligent decisions, because we don't know, based on the way the statistics are presented to us, what the odds are of things actually happening to us, bad things related to the virus. Now, let me just say, I'm trying to get this thing going, and it takes a lot of time to make these videos. And it would be nice to see, response and reactions. So if you are watching, I would really appreciate it if you would, check the like box, hit the little thumbs up symbol, and subscribe on YouTube to my channel, as I'm trying to, see if I can get more people to watch. Otherwise, there's really no point in taking the time to make all these videos. The statistics I'm going to use in this video are from where I live. They're from Hillsborough County, Florida. Now, Hillsborough County, Florida includes Tampa, but Tampa isn't, synonymous with Hillsborough County. And it's just Tampa. It's not the whole Tampa Bay area, which includes other counties. There are approximately 1.5 million people in Hillsborough County. I mean, the last census was 2010. We don't have numbers for 2020, but they make estimations in between. And the estimates are we're pushing around 1.5 million people, which is up quite a bit since I moved here 7 years ago. Now, in this county of 1.5 million, what are the numbers? Well, the numbers right now are 72 dead. That was as of this morning. 388 hospitalized as of this morning. And 1,939 total cases going back to February, when the first person was found and infected. I think he had come back from a trip to Italy. So those are the numbers for Hillsborough County with 1.5 million people. Your chance, if you live in Hillsborough County, as do I, if you're an average citizen, which I'm not, I'm over 65 and I have some health conditions that make me more at risk than others. But if you're an average person without extra risk factors in Hillsborough County, Florida, your chance of running into somebody who is carrying COVID-19, of contracting it from that run-in with that individual, being hospitalized, being sent to the ICU, and ultimately dying, is let me make sure I get this straight, 0.0000048. 0.00048. Now, about half the people have died in this county. It's not clear exactly what it is, but it's at least half. Were people living in a nursing home. Because the people who are, of all the people in this county, the people who are most locked down and have been most locked down since the beginning are nursing home patients. They're about half, not of the population, but half of the people that have died. Which means if you're not a nursing home resident and you're an average person walking around Tampa Bay, your chance of running into somebody with COVID-19, catching it, being hospitalized, and dying is 0.00024. Now, what does that mean? Well, let me just translate that into more simple English instead of math. That means if you're that person, the average person, your chance of contracting COVID and dying are about 2.5 hundredths in Fairfax County. Let me repeat that. 2.5 hundredths. Now, that doesn't look like that's a really high risk, but that's the accurate number. That's the statistic based on what we're being told, and it is accurate. Let me move on to the total cases. According to the statistics published this morning, 1,939 people have contracted COVID-19 in Hillsborough County going back to the beginning of the year. Now, that's an accurate statistic. 1,939 that we know of have contracted COVID-19. Now, of course, there's loads of people out there who might have contracted it who we don't know about that yet. But anyway, that's the number that's being reported. Why do I say that that number is deceptive? Well, there's a simple reason. Because every day, and I check the statistics every day, because of those conditions that I mentioned about, I am concerned about this. And I have been locking myself down and going out with a mask and doing all the other things you're supposed to do. I don't think that this isn't a threat. I do. So I watch it every day. I check the statistics in the morning and I check them again in the evening to see what's going on. But this is why it's deceptive. Because when they report that number, they never subtract any of the people who contracted it. They never explain what percentage of those people that they tested, are just carrying antibodies. They've had it. They might have it now, but they're totally asymptomatic. I mean, that would give you some more context. I mean, imagine if we handled statistics on chickenpox the way we're handling the statistics on COVID. Say in 1950 we started, a number of people had chickenpox, and we never subtract from that the people who recover or the people who die. There'd be hundreds of millions of people who have had chickenpox. And the number would look like we're being overwhelmed with chickenpox among our population, which, of course, obviously is not true. But what they're doing is every day the graph goes up, 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 up. The bar gets higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. So that every day, if you don't look at the statistic all the time, don't look at the footnotes that they don't even produce anymore. There used to be footnotes on these statistics when they were published them. They don't even do that anymore. The footnotes are gone. It looks like, my God, it's getting worse. We reopened in Florida 3 weeks ago. Look, the number of cases just keeps going up. And they are. The number of people who have been infected is going up. But they don't even subtract the people who have died from the number. They don't subtract the people who have recovered. And obviously somebody's recovered. I mean, all these people would have been dead by this point. There's only, the time you're hit and you die is usually like 2 weeks. And this has been going on for 3 months. So it's a wildly inaccurate statistic. And of course, it means that every day, this looks like it's getting worse and worse and worse. And it doesn't take into account the fact that they're, doing all kinds of testing, which I'll talk about next. Back in the beginning of this pandemic, back when it was an epidemic, we all know that there were insufficient supplies of tests, various tests that they used to see if you have COVID-19. So early on, when they had limited testing, who did they test? Well, logically, you would test the people who are sick to make sure before you begin treating them that they actually have COVID-19 instead of something like pneumonia, which would require a different regimen of treatments, different protocols. Now, the other people that they tested would be hospital workers who are coming into contact with these people who have COVID-19 and people with rescue squads and things like that, first responders who were coming into contact with the patients at any level. So those were the people who were being tested. Not surprisingly, in the early testing, percentage of people who tested positive was pretty high. I can remember in Hillsborough County early on, about 15% of the people being tested were testing positive. Now, as new tests and more tests became available, and they started broadening the testing to other people, you still needed basically equivalent of a prescription to get tested. For most people, I actually did go to a lab once, and they asked me if I wanted to be tested, and I said no. I didn't see. I figured there were limited tests; they shouldn't be wasting them on me. But now in Hillsborough County, they have a not far from here at Raymond James Stadium where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play, where the football team plays. You have drive-in testing, and you can call and make an appointment and give them the information, and you show up at your appointed time, and they will give you a free COVID test. So they're testing the general population now because they have ever more testing, and there's more and more testing going on every day. So what's that mean? What's the impact of that? Well, what that means is two things are happening. One is, if you look at the statistics that are being published, the number of total cases is rising sharply, and the number of new cases goes up almost every day. Why? Because they're finding more people who have it. Now, the problem is with that statistic, they don't tell you if they had it, they tested positive because they're carrying basically the antibodies for it, or that they are sick but they're asymptomatic, or that they were mildly sick and were treated at home with medication, or that maybe they went into the hospital but didn't have to go into the ICU, or did they go into the ICU, or did they end up on a ventilator? They don't tell you any of that. So what you see are the numbers going up and up and up. But the other thing that they used to show was the percentage of people who had been tested so far who were negative. And for example, it started out when they began about 15%. It got down to under 8%. In other words, it cut in half. Only half the people they were testing were showing up positive as opposed to when they started it. And at that point, they stopped publishing the percentage. The place I go to get my stats every day, it's not there anymore. They took that out and they changed the website so they don't show you what this percentage, how much it's going down. It's been several weeks now when it was under 8%. I don't know what it is now. It could be at 7 or 6 or 5 or 4 or 3. I have no idea. And I haven't been able to find it anywhere else in the web. Now, I know the governor has it. I know these statistics are out there. I know they have them, but they're not sharing them with us. And I think that this is really important. Why do I think that it's important that we know what the breakdown is here? It's because if you don't know, and then you just go off these early statistics, and you start make extrapolations from them, what you might call modeling, you'd come up with some very strange results. And they did. For example, on 3 April 2020, experts, a bunch of experts at the University of South Florida, which is located here in Tampa, it's right just a couple blocks from here, concluded that that we were headed for a big problem, that there was going to be a hospital bed shortage and an ICU shortage, along with a ventilator shortage, given the number of cases that they were likely to see. This was like New York on a smaller scale. We only have 1.5 million people. New York's, I don't know, over 8 million people. Obviously, it was going to be a lot worse in New York, but they were predicting pretty dim things here too. Why were they doing that? Well, it's because of those numbers that they were reporting. For example, if you have 15% of the people infected who are tested, if you extrapolate from that 15% of the 1.5 million people in Hillsborough County are likewise infected, you'd end up with over 200,000 cases in Tampa. Now, remember, we actually have 1,939, so that's not even close. Now, they didn't say that they were expecting 200,000 cases, but if you do the modeling based on the statistics they had, That's what you're going to end up with. If you assume, as they were assuming at the time, that the death rate, some people were saying it was close to 10% of those infected. If you have over 200,000 people infected and 10% of them are going to die, you're going to have over 20,000 deaths in Hillsborough County, Florida. Now, keep in mind, we've had 72. It's not even close. Even if you go with a 5% death rate, you would come out with over 10,000 dead. If you come out with a 2.5% death rate, you'd have, like 2,500 dead. We've had 72. That's why these early statistics, if you did your modeling based on them, you were going to come up with these wildly outlandish predictions about what was going to happen in Hillsborough County. And it never happened. Why didn't it happen? Because we hunkered down? No. It didn't happen because it was never going to happen. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not arguing that if we hadn't locked down and we hadn't practiced social distancing, more people wouldn't have died. They would have. But we weren't going to lose over 200,000 people because the assumptions they were drawing were based on a population that they were testing, which was the most likely people to be positive. And as they continually expand the testing into the rest of the population, the percentage of infections keeps dropping. Like I said, it's already been cut in half, and I'm sure right now, because they haven't reported in weeks, it's less than half. Okay, this is shot 8A, hospitalizations. One of the most important statistics is it concerns the number of people hospitalized. Now, right now, if you look at the charts and you look at the numbers that were being given in Hillsborough County, the number of hospitalizations is 388. Now, when they used to publish that number, there was a little asterisk on it. Now, most people don't check out the footnotes. They wouldn't go down to the bottom of the page and look at the tiny, tiny little print that said, this number doesn't include the people who have since died or recovered. Now, for the last 3 weeks, they haven't even had the little asterisk on the number. So what happens? The same thing you have with total cases. The number only goes up. If you look at the chart of hospitalizations going back to late February and early March, it's just, it just goes up, up, up. Never goes down. So whenever you look, it's like, oh my God, more people are hospitalized. There are 50 hospitalized. There are 75. There's 100. There's 150. There's 200. There's 250. Oh my God, there's 300 people hospitalized in Hillsborough County. Now there's 350. There's 370. Eventually it's going to be 400. But are they really 400 or 300 and whatever the number is today? What's 388 people sitting in hospital beds in Tampa Bay? No. We know that 72 of them died, so they're not there. But how many people recovered? I mean, this has been going on for 3 months now. Are the people who were hospitalized back in early March still in the hospital? No. They've either died or they've been cured or released or recovered and went home. I mean, some people go to the hospital and they're still a little sick, but they're treatable at home, so they send them home. We have no idea. I'm sure the governor does, and the people in the medical experts and scientific experts who work with him, they know those numbers, but we don't get them. All we see are these graphs that go up, up, up. And that's what the reporters see. Readily, reporters aren't digging around. Reporters look at the numbers that I'm looking at. And it's my God, the number of cases keeps going up. The number of hospitalizations keeps going up. Florida opened 3 weeks ago. Ron DeSantis, he's the governor. He's a Republican. Oh my God. He's killing these people. Look at all the numbers are getting worse and worse and worse. But the really important number, and I've seen DeSantis talk about this in his press conferences, but the experts don't release these numbers to us, is how many people are currently hospitalized. And apparently, from what he said, that number is going down. And I would think it would be going down because the number of people dying is also going down. I mean, there was one day a couple of weeks ago, I think the high point we lost, I forget how many people we lost in the county in one day. Florida, it was like 60-something, 72, I don't know what it was. The lowest was 1. And if you look at the deaths in Florida since they reopened, it's going down, 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 down. And the number of deaths in Hillsborough I can remember it was pretty while ago, it was 60. And since then, we got 60 fast, and now we're up to 70 plus, and it hasn't been that fast. So people are dying at a slower rate. But you can't tell that from the chart. It just looks like, oh my God, all these people are hospitalized. And every day, the chart gets bigger. Every day, the number goes up. So you have the number of cases going up. You have the number of new cases sometimes going up because they're doing all the testing. And you have a number of hospitalizations going up because they never subtract the people who die or recover. And it looks like it's getting bad, or it looks like it's just as bad. Maybe we shouldn't be open. But if you look at the deaths, they're going down, 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 down. And initially they were saying, well, it's 2 weeks before you tell. So you open here, it's not, the new deaths are going to show up for 2 weeks. Well, we'll push, it'll be 4 weeks Monday. It's 5 weeks Monday, I think. And the deaths are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Some days nobody dies in Hillsborough County. Some days it's 1, occasionally it's 2. But there were days where a half dozen were done. And that's the problem with all these the way they're reporting these statistics. It's very deceptive. And it doesn't give you the context of what's going on. So the obvious question is why? Why aren't they giving us better statistics? Why do they report statistics in such a fashion that it just makes it look like it's getting a lot worse, when if you think about the statistics and the way they're reported, and you look at the declining death rate, substantially declining death rate in the state, things are obviously getting better, despite the fact that we've been open now for over a month. Why is that? Now, I don't think that Governor DeSantis is conspiring to, hide this from the people. And I know from watching some of his press conferences, he has these other numbers. He knows, what's the status is of the people who test positive, just how bad they are. He knows how many people are currently hospitalized. And he has said that that's going down. But that's not what's getting reported. And that doesn't, influence, because the press ignores him. He's not Andrew Cuomo. So they ignore anything he says. Besides that, he's a Republican. Who would listen to a Republican? And of course, the health officials in the state, the health officials here in Hillsborough County is run by the Democrats. So they're putting out the numbers that, in a way, that make things look worse than they actually are. And I think that that's partly conscious. It has to be, because they removed those asterisks that they used to have on some of the statistics that would tell people this number of hospitalizations isn't current hospitalizations. It's all hospitalizations over the entire time of the pandemic. Well, that's an important qualification. And somebody to take that down, it had to be done consciously. Now, is this some sort of vast conspiracy on the part of, progressives in Hillsborough County? I don't think it is. But I suspect they're trying to play it safe. And one of the ways to get people to lock down without getting the governor to order them to lock down is to give them statistics that make things look worse than they are. And then you can scare the people. So people are scared. And, I know people are scared. I talk to people on the phone and they're scared. But, unlike me, they check the statistics out every day. They don't look at the graphs. They don't read the footnotes. And I would be scared if I had not paid any attention to the numbers and I picked up the numbers in Hillsborough County. I would wonder why we were, coming out of lockdown, because it looks pretty bad. But if you've been following the numbers all along and you know how they report the numbers and you understand that and you can put it in context and you keep your eye on the ball, I would argue, and that's the number of people who are dying, which is, as I said, it's in the 70s. And some of the early projections was, we were going to have thousands of dead. And if you consider that of the 72 people who were dead, probably at least half of them were in nursing homes. For the average person walking around Hillsborough County, as I said, the chance of contracting COVID-19 and ending up dead is 2.5%. Now, if they would come out and say, you need to be careful because your chance of death from COVID-19, if you're the average citizen of Hillsborough County, is 2.5%. I don't think you keep people off the beaches. Imagine we kept flu statistics like that since 1980. When did we have the Hong Kong flu? Was say about, it was during Woodstock, so that was late 60s. So say since 1970, we kept a running total of all the people who caught flu in this country and all the people who died of flu, and we never subtracted. I've had flu several times. I'm not dead. Imagine if we kept track of the flu, Hong Kong, H1N1, all these other flus, and we kept track every year for the last 40 years, and we never subtracted the total number of cases from the people who recovered, the people who died. We just let that number get bigger and bigger and bigger. Every year, 100,000 people contracted it, and the next year another 100,000, and the number of the graph would just keep going up, 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 up for 40 years. Hospitalizations because of the flu would go up, 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 up. There'd be hundreds of thousands of people hospitalized for the flu over the last 40 years. But there's not 100,000 people sitting in hospitals right now with the flu. I mean, that would be absurd to report the numbers that way, but that is how they're reporting on COVID-19. That's exactly what they're doing, and that's what's scaring people, and that's why you can't make an educated decision if you haven't been paying attention to this from the beginning. And I have. Maybe it's because of my condition, because I had kidney transplant in November, and my immune system is suppressed. I take pills every day to suppress my immune system, so I need to be careful. And part of being careful for me was finding out where I could get these numbers and checking them out every day. Because if I don't do that, I can't, I'm not going to rely on them. I want to use my common sense. I locked down before the governor locked us down, before the county locked us down. I had locked myself down. That's how you operate as an intelligent person, making your own choices. And now, even though, I have all the risks, when I look at the numbers, I don't fear that I'm going to die every time I go out. I go to Walgreens, I don't wear rubber gloves. I don't wear long sleeves. I don't wear long pants. I don't have a hat pulled down over my head. And I don't walk around with a spray bottle. Because I know that if I contract it, my risk of dying is high, higher than the average person. But my risk of contracting it, running into somebody, I mean, even if you take the number of cases and you double it, maybe there's 10,000 cases in a county with 1.5 million people. The odds of me running into somebody who's carrying it and contracting it from them is still pretty slim. So that's the problem. And that's, what Mark Twain said. There's three kinds of lies. Lies, damned lies,